Hi, friends. So my name is
Hello.
Mia Park. Hi. Welcome to In Response, interviews with intriguing internalizers. My name is Mia Park, and I've been doing this interview series in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It is May 29th, 2020, so we're still very much in relationship to it. And also just in general to talk to my friends and my family around the world about their response to just life in general. So Daniel and I met, we actually met at a travel website. How many? That was probably 11 years ago.
It was
And
it was
then,
10 years and 2 months ago. I
so
looked
he's
it
got,
up.
he's
I
a
looked it
journalist.
up.
He's you look that stuff up. He's got that kind of brain. And we decided to rent a car together in the outback of Australia. Now I'm in
It was awesome.
Chicago, and at the time you were in Vienna, right?
I was in Vienna, yes, but actually our meeting and our experience we had there set a lot of things in motion in my life. And so what
Mhm.
I didn't know at that time of March 2010 was that a few months later, half a year later, I'd be moving to Canada.
I know it
So
happened pretty fast. So you've been in Canada for almost 10 years. Is that right?
that's right. Yes,
Oh
that's
my
exactly
gosh, yes.
right.
So,
It's
so,
10 years ago that I came to Canada. Yeah.
so when Daniel and I met, it's a very long, weird, mystical, magical story. I'm not effing kidding how weird and magical the story was, right? Am I joking? I'm not. It involved an Aboriginal elder at the most sacred rock in the world and Korean monks.
Several, yes. And
Several.
it all started with your helpfulness because there you were on this flight with I wasn't there at the flight. It's just that part happened a few hours before we met. But you were at this airport and there were these Korean monks who were hungry and they were trying to buy a sandwich and they had a language barrier with the lady there who was selling the sandwiches, and the Korean monks were saying panini panini, but they were not understood, and you stepped in, you saved their day, you saved
I
them
say
from
their stomachs.
starvation. And this is how this set so many things in motion, and we ended up having fresh kimchi under the stars in front of Uluru in the Australian outback. And I mean, it was just priceless. And because
I
we're
mean,
talking about this, see, actually have this book here. This is the Aboriginal Elders book. His name was Bob Randall. He passed on 5 years ago, and this is his biography. So I can highly recommend it. Bob was an amazing teacher, and he had a very hard upbringing. He was from the stolen generation. He was abducted from his mother by the authorities in Australia and put on some island off the northern coast of Australia. He was not allowed to speak his language. There was not enough food. They had to go hunt even as children so they could survive on that island in the care of some Christian denomination.
Christian,
And
yeah.
but eventually he became very important for the Australians, for the Australian Aborigines. He was instrumental in the beginning of the end of taking their mixed children away, and he wrote a song which became sort of the anthem of the Aboriginal civil rights movement. And it was just amazing to meet him and to spend time in his home. And that's all thanks to you and your helpfulness. So
Oh my gosh,
um,
we got up
that
early. We went to that sunrise ceremony at Uluru.
yeah,
So Uluru Ayers Rock is the colonized name of it, but Uluru is the geographically the largest solid rock in the world and also very holy. So we got up early with Oliver from Switzerland we met in our hostel, and
right,
we jumped
yeah.
in the car and we did a sunrise Korean Buddhist and Aboriginal ceremony at the rock. And then we went to go have breakfast at Bob Randall's house. His wife is American, Barbara. But
Yeah.
Korean breakfast is whatever's left over from dinner the night before. So we had Korean kimchi rice soup for breakfast, and like none of y'all white people wanted to eat it. And
I
so
did.
well, maybe you, but all the other well, there's Americans, Australians, Swiss, none of the white people. So I remember the monk kept giving me everybody's bowl because you don't waste food, especially if you're a
Yeah,
Buddhist monk. And in Korean,
yeah.
he kept saying, eat. I had like 3.5 bowls of leftover kimchi rice soup for breakfast. And then, oh my God. And then the lead Korean monk got a little possessed. And he was telling us how Hitler was a reincarnated Korean monk that went rogue.
Right.
Remember?
That was a weird part. That was a weird part. Yeah.
And
I
he had facts. He had reasons why Hitler was a reincarnated Korean monk that went bad. He had a list of reasons why.
yeah, I still beg to differ, but okay.
That was weird, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah. Yeah.
So friends watching, sorry, like Daniel and I, we've communicated over social media and texting, but we've never like seen each other since the last 10 years. So sometimes when you travel, if you have an adventurous soul like Daniel and like mine, these adventures happen. And I have traveled the world many times, but that adventure that Daniel and I had with the Aboriginal elder and the Korean monks in the desert was probably one of the highlights like of my life. So it is so special for me to connect with you. And then we drove, and Daniel did all the driving, and I was passed out in the backseat. All these kind of things. Anyway, so Daniel, now back to you. I'm glad that we got to connect on this crazy adventure we had in the middle of Australia 10 years ago. So Daniel is a journalist and from Vienna, Austria, but now living in Yukon, Canada. And is there anything else about you that you want people to know?
Oh, well, here in the Yukon, it's very interesting. The Yukoners always say the Yukon. The only the Yukon. The only people who don't say the Yukon is our government, and nobody knows why. But that's the funny part. Um, uh, what can we say? Yeah, so I mostly cover technology news for a German publishing house. It's called Heise. We're the German technology news publisher. I mostly write online, but we do neat magazines like this one. It's Europe's largest tech magazine. And on the side, I've been doing the Abenteuer magazine, which is the German. Sorry, this is the other way around on my screen. This is the German annual tourist guide for the Yukon and southeast of Alaska. But sadly, this year there won't be an Abenteuer magazine because we won't have any German tourists because there is a pandemic going around, which brings us back to the interview of today.
Yes, the access point of just old friends talking. So in the interview series, I like to first ask what is immediately going on where you are. You maybe talked about that a little bit. And then to follow up with, after your observations of the outside world, I'd love to hear observations of your inside world. What is going on in your heart and deep mind?
Okay, so the first part is easier. We're extremely fortunate here in the Yukon. We have had a total of 11 infected COVID patients. I think only one of them was actually infected within the Yukon at the dentist visit. And none of them required hospitalization. None of them required intensive care. No, nobody died of it. So we were very, very lucky, and we haven't had a case in over a month. So because we closed our borders, and it is and people to some degree followed the rules. So now we're in a lucky position that we don't even have to wear masks in town. Generally in Canada they say please wear the masks. In the Yukon they say well, only if you cannot distance or in certain situations. But because we haven't had any cases in over a month, we have a very relaxed situation. Even during when we had the cases, it was much more relaxed than in the big cities. I mean, Whitehorse is where I live is the largest city in the Yukon. We have a bit over 30,000 people, but it's a very nature is in the city, and we are so close to trails. Luckily, we had a very cold and long winter, so I was able to go cross country skiing every day, even when I was in insulation because I had been traveling to Guyana. And then I was able to go out allowed to go out as long as I kept distance to people. And because we have so many trails and the snow, and so cross country skiing was easy to do without running into anyone else, other than foxes and wild animals. So we're very lucky in that respect. We had a good supply. The airport kept open. The trucks keep bringing us food and necessary supplies. And to as much as they can, the government's looking out for us. So there are various, support programs.
That's great.
So that's what's going on here. Of course, our tourist industry, which is very important to us, they are hurting. There's hardly anything going on, so there will be some companies that won't come back, sadly. But overall, we are very lucky compared to what we see on the news. What's going inside? Well, I've actually myself. I feel also very lucky for myself because um, I don't have children that I have to take care of. I recognize for people, especially with young children, it's very, very hard because they have to entertain the children. People try to keep their job at the same time. The children don't understand why they can't see their grandparents or why they can't go out play with other friends, things like that. And often in close quarters. So that is very, very challenging. I don't have that. So I have that privilege. I have a roommate who's awesome. And she also had to go in self-isolation when I came back from Guyana. So thank you to her if she's watching. Um, and yeah, I have been also enjoying the break from traveling because I used to really love traveling. But then the last 10 years through my job, because of my job, I've been traveling a lot for my job. And so now, because I have to go to conferences, I'm the correspondent for North America for HEISE, so I go to conferences, trade fairs, some other events that I have to be physically there. And now all these things have been canceled. So I'm just staying home and I'm enjoying that. I'm also very lucky that I do have a job that HEISE is still, paying me for the work I do. And there is so much work to do because it's so much stories to write, news to report, because the world's changing, and the world's, a lot of people in distress. Governments and companies don't know what to do. You can draw up all the plans, but at the end of the day, you're everybody's boiling with water, as we say in German. It's trial and error a lot. So a lot of things are changing, and that means news. So there's something to write. But I've been also looking at other things I could do. I had actually planned for this year to start on the side electric car business. Me and a partner in town, we were going to import used electric vehicles from the US and sell them here. And that completely imploded because of Corona for a number of reasons. So that's not happening. So I'm thinking about other things that we could do as a, not to get rich, but to have a bit of another side business. And I've taken some meditation classes. I don't really feel the effect yet, but I've done a beginner course over several weeks. I bought a kayak because I miss that something inside. I miss the exercise. I used to play squash a lot, indoor soccer, the cross-country skiing. Well, the cross-country skiing stopped because eventually spring came. But yeah, the squash is not happening at the moment. So I'm trying to get out a bit of my comfort bubble, and that I go out on the water and see how that goes.
You are, as
and
always, keeping active.
I'm trying to, yeah, it's now it's a bit more challenging, but yeah, I do try to keep active, and I've reached out to a lot of friends like you, and to even some, old friends from high school, and reconnected to people to see how they are doing and to share our experiences. And I have a friend from high school I haven't talked to in many years, and we found out we both really like Joshua Caddison songs, his way of storytelling. So it's good. It's good.
Oh, it's nice to hear that. I can hear the hopefulness in your voice. That I'm sorry your electric car business didn't work out, but it sounds like you're still like moving onwards and upwards.
Yeah, I know. There's I understand it. For many people, this is really, really hard and challenging. But I feel blessed that I don't have to worry about the food tomorrow on the table, and my mortgage being paid next month. So
Yeah, I feel like the pandemic is a response, is a common pressure we're all having. Here in the States now, there's like more African Americans being just killed, literally killed, because of the color of their skin. So there's pressure on top of pressure on top of pressure. And I know that the layers of pressure may be different for you in Western Canada, but I'm wondering, just in general, in response to the world, do you have a philosophical or spiritual response to just life right now for you?
um, Well, it has reconfirmed my conviction that education is very important, because I see all these completely ridiculous conspiracy theories being spread, who are also quite contradictory. You know, it's the ugly Chinese who created this virus in a lab, but the virus is a hoax. It doesn't even exist. You know, it's gonna, you know, uh, so I think education, and I'm not talking about training for a job. I'm talking about actual education, where you have to discover your own way of thinking, and your own way of questioning. You know, I think that is very, very important. That's something we as a society need to invest in more. I have started or sort of gone back to songwriting. So when I say songwriting, I'm talking about lyrics. I'm not so much the melody guy. I enjoy taking songs and that exist and writing new lyrics for them. And several of them have been COVID themed. So, for example, I took an old blues song and trying to turn it into the COVID Corona blues, and I got some musicians excited. They want to record it, but then a publisher showed up, and they claimed that they have copyright on the tune. And I have a law degree. I researched it. I beg to differ that they have a worldwide still a copyright. They do have in the U.S. Maybe it's arguable, but and then they're just taking forever to decide if we're allowed to record the song or not. It's frustrating. So this is how copyright can also hurt the arts. That's a thing I learned. I had a very different experience with an awesome blues musician from he's actually Dutch, lives in Vienna. His name is Hans Tasing. So he wrote a blues song, recorded it about 8 years ago, and it's called the Delta Time. You can find it on YouTube if you look for Hans Tasing with THEESS. Anyway, I can put it in. Maybe we can add it to the video later. And I rewrote it. So I rewrote it with a Canada theme. I used to live in Nova Scotia for several years on the Atlantic side of Canada, and there it's a relatively poor area of Canada, and a lot of men have been forced to move to Alberta to work there in the oil industry, and leaving their families often behind in Nova Scotia, because it's a lot nicer to live in Nova Scotia than in the oil fields. I can tell you that. And so the song is about this man from that area of Canada who's now in the oil industry in Alberta, but because of COVID, the oil price tanked, so he's been laid off, and he just wants to go back home. So what in Hans Tasing's original song was this man who wants to go back to the Delta, go back on Delta time, became Atlantic time. That's the time zone they have in the Maritimes on the East Coast in Canada, and it's give me the East Coast rhythm, give me the East Coast rhyme. I'm going back on Atlantic time. So, and I contacted Mr. Tasing, and he immediately agreed that if I find musicians to do it, that we're allowed to use his song and with the new lyrics, and that's really positive. So now I'm looking for some East Coast blues musician who would like to record it. And yeah, it's things like that keep my gray cells going. And
Oh
I
my
learned
gosh.
if I may share a little, because you mentioned the pressure on Black people and
Sorry.
people
Yes.
people of color in the United States. I want to connect that with the blues. I mean, the blues is traditionally Black music, and in a way we have appropriated it. But something I learned in the whole process of engaging with the blues, then I would like to share that because it was kind of eye-opening. If you look at the blues repertoire that exists, a lot of it is about traveling. It's about trains. It's about going other places or wanting to be in other places. And why there are some, also which are a bit provocative about, sexual intercourse and relationships. But there is a lot about the moving. And I was wondering why that is, and I found this professor. Sorry, I forget his name, who explained it very well. He said, well, when slavery was abolished, the blacks were no longer slaves. Did they get the right to vote? Not really. That was a struggle for many, many decades, and it's going on today, right? Did they get the right to live where they want, buy the house they want? No. Did they get the right to stay in the hotel they want, or the bus they want to use? No. But they got the right to move. If they were able to walk, if they were able to afford their own car, that is a right they gained with liberation from slavery. They were free to move within the United States, at least. And so this is why a lot of blues songs have this as a topic.
Mm. Wow, very lovely. You have your creative inspiration, but of course you're filtering it through your technical, logical, law degree kind of brain, and then you learn really cool history along the way. Very cool. Well, we're actually already at about time. I feel like we just got started because we have to connect with things. So, is there
Yes,
any? Yeah, I mean, is there any last thing that you want to share with people, just
I do.
from your
You
mind
asked
or
me
heart?
you asked me in the preparation before, before our interview, we had exchanged some messages, and you asked me if there's something I would like to share, something,
Hmm.
and there is actually. So it's sort of a lesson I've learned through my work in politics and public engagement and these things. It is, and that gets reaffirmed a lot now with all the conspiracy theories around COVID, is do not believe your own propaganda. So whatever your goal is, you're a feminist, you're an environmentalist, or you're maybe a Second Amendment freak, whatever your objective is that you're fighting for. You have your message and you have your vision of the future. You have this what you're telling other people, trying to convince them to join your cause, or at least get out of the way. It's this having this kind of propaganda is okay. It's part of your campaigning, but don't don't believe too much. Don't drink too much of your own Kool-Aid. Always keep in mind that maybe you got something wrong. And maybe you got the underlying tenet of what you believe in wrong. Or maybe there's someone out there, well, maybe your tenet is right, but maybe someone has a vastly different idea on how to tackle the issue that may be a lot better than yours. And don't give up on your dream, but keep in mind that maybe you don't know it all yet.
Those are lovely words. Don't believe your own hype, but don't give up on your dream. Something like that.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
Oh, cool. Ah, wise words, wise words.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for talking. And I think you can actually type it. Do you want to type in the name of the guy who wrote the blues song?
Oh,
Are
let
you
me
able to do
see.
that where it says
Let me
comments? Because
see.
that way it'll live in the comments on YouTube and Facebook. Hans double E double T H double E double S or something.
Did you that's the live comment. I think I have to switch
Yeah.
to the live
Or I
comment
could do it.
here on
I just want
YouTube.
to make sure it
Yeah.
gets in there because it
Can
sounds like it's
you copy it over?
sure.
Because
Oh,
I
you
don't
did
have that
private chat.
open.
Oh, I see. Okay. This is live and we're dealing with technology. Okay, he is a blues songwriter.
Yeah, he's a blues, singer, guitar player, singer,
Uh-huh.
songwriter.
And singer
Um,
in Vienna, you said?
yeah, he's Dutch, but he lives in Vienna.
Okay,
And
great.
did you see the name that you got it there?
I did.
Awesome.
Can you
Thank
see it
you.
popping up? All right, cool. Well, thanks again so much, Daniel. It's so nice to reconnect with you after our magical adventure in Australia, and there's many more life adventures to come.
Thank you
And
for the
thanks for watching.
invitation. It's an honor. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, so cool. Thanks. And thanks for watching, everyone. Like my Facebook page, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I've got some more interviews coming up with really, really cool people like Daniel. So thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
She also has a cute a good newsletter.
Oh, that's
Whichever
right.
side.
Which it's in here. It's got to get into computer form in a couple of days. So cool. All right. Thanks, everyone.